Hi, my name is Zia. I'm the dental school coach. Today I have one of my students with me. His name is Justin. He did amazingly well on the DAT, and that's why I want to interview him. Justin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to us?
Hey guys, so my name's Justin, like Zia said. Let's see, I took the DAT pretty recently, last month. I had been out of school for quite a while, so a lot of the courses and material was not very fresh in my mind.
Mhm.
Let's see, my background, I just completed nursing school, so that was kind of fresh. But yeah, that's me.
What was your DAT score, and what was your breakdown?
Yeah. So I have my score right here. So my academic average was 24.
Hmm.
My total science was
You're
26.
killing it, man. You're killing it.
Man, a lot of work went into
Yeah.
that. But let's see. Ochem was 30. Gen Chem 26. Bio 25.
Oh
And then
wow.
yeah, those are
Tell
wild.
us all the secrets, man.
Yeah, I want to.
All right,
But yeah.
so where should we begin? Let's take us to the journey of taking the DAT. I know that you had been have been working full time,
Mhm.
and then you had to stop working for a few months
Yeah.
to focus on the DAT. So give us a glimpse of your day, how it looked like, and what your study schedule looked like, and how did you study for the DAT?
Sure. So, yeah, as you said, I was when I started to study for the DAT, I was still working full time,
Mm-hmm.
and I attempted to study for the test as well as work, but I kind of realized that my progress wasn't really going, like what I wanted it to
Right.
be, and I realized that I had to quit. So I quit
Mm-hmm.
and to study full time for the test. Um, I would basically just wake up, study, and then sleep. Like literally 12 plus hours a day.
Oh wow,
Uh,
that's a dedication right there.
oh yeah. For about 3 months, I did like that, and
Mm.
it paid off. So that's
Definitely. Now that you have a 24 academic average and 26 TS, I think you are gonna get into schools that any school that you're gonna apply to. So
yeah.
having said that, let's take us to the individual subtopic of the DAT. Let's start with
Sure.
biology. What did you use as a resource material for the bio section, and how did you prepare for the bio section?
So just in general, how I kind of learned what materials to use and that kind of thing, and like to develop a study plan, I
Mhm.
went to Student Doctor Network
Okay.
and just looked at several other people's breakdowns, like
Hmm.
other successful people, and just took a little bit of each one of those. And then I kind of just developed my plan from there.
Okay.
So, so for biology, I used the CliffsNotes AP Bio.
Okay. Do you
Um,
have it in front of you? Do you want to show it to the audience?
sure. So it looks like this,
Okay.
and specifically, it's the third edition.
Hmm.
That one is great because it has a lot of info on like plants and yeah, it was I don't know, it was highly recommended to get the third edition, so
Right.
I did, and I read that a total of two times all the way throughout, and then just kind of randomly as I'm studying, if I wanted to look up something, like
Hmm.
I would go to it. Um, let's see. So for bio, I used this. I also used this the blue book, the Kaplan blue book.
Okay. Do you have
It
that
was
with you or?
I do, yeah. It was just okay as like a I don't know, as like a starter because it's pretty not very detailed.
What else did you study for bio? Because I know that CliffsNote. I also use CliffsNote. I used the second edition 5 years ago when I was taking
Oh
the DAT.
yeah,
It's highly recommended. It's one of the most used
yeah,
study material.
yeah.
But it's not enough. I feel that sometimes you get questions that are higher level. You can probably get a 21, 22 easily. Did you supplement your bio studying with something else, like a
Oh
DAT
yeah,
Destroyer book? Okay.
I used a few other sources. One of the things I used was Paralysis Notes,
Okay.
which I got from the Student Doctor Network.
Yeah.
I pulled a lot of stuff from his breakdown.
Hmm.
Uh, that was pretty helpful, but I didn't like read those super in detail. That would be something like maybe I would refer to if I wanted to look at a certain topic
Okay.
or that kind of thing. However, I think one of the main things that I used that helped the most was the DAT Destroyer,
Okay.
specifically for biology. Man, honestly, some of the questions on the actual tests were pretty similar to some of the questions in the Destroyer, and it just really prepared me like really well.
Right. I can relate to that. I also use the Destroyer book, and oh my God, it's so hard. It was so hard to use, not just because the sheer volume of questions they have, but also the difficulty level of the question. So
Yeah.
it goes to very in-depth materials in the Bio Destroyer book. So how did you study for the how did you study Bio Destroyer and also the CliffsNotes?
Yeah, so like, okay. So I began, like I said, since I had not studied, a lot of this biology such a long time, I wanted general overview. So I did the Kaplan Blue Book, just the bio section, real quick, nothing too detailed. And then I went ahead and read the Cliffs AP Bio book once. I don't know, man. I was starting to take notes, but then I kind of realized that takes a lot of time. So I just kind of settled with underlining and then just kind of constantly going back over stuff if I needed to or whatever. So I went ahead and underlined a lot of things in the AP Bio book. And after I did that, as far as bio goes, I went straight into the DAT Destroyer. And I did those questions. And an important thing to note about the Destroyer is you have to understand like everything from there. So don't just don't just know like, okay, I got a question right, that's cool. Know why the other answers are not right. Know as much as you can about why that one is right, and like just try to dive as deep as you can with it.
So I think that's good enough for bio. What do you think? Do you have anything else to share? Ferralis Note, AP Bio book, and then DAT Destroyer. So let's move to Gen Chem. What did you use for Gen Chem?
So for Gen Chem, like I said, I hadn't looked at this materials in so long, so I needed a refresher. For most of the sciences, I was pretty much starting at ground zero, so I needed just to get back in the game. So I stumbled upon Chad's videos, and I used Chad's videos to get into Ochem, chemistry, and I did use him for the math as well. And the thing about Chad's videos is a lot of people on Student Doctor Network, they'll send you to the Course Saver website, which I think is like, last time I looked, it was like $25 or something like that. Well, if you go to his actual website, like it's called chemistryprep.com, he has courses there. You can get a site-wide subscription for $10 a month, which is what I ended up using. So that was what I did for chemistry and Ochem.
Yeah, I think Chad separated from Course Saver website a few years ago, and he has his own site. I think it's. I mean, I don't know. Let me quickly check. I think it's called chadsvideos.com also.
I just looked, and it's actually chemistryprep.com. That's where the actual courses that you can pay. He does have a website, chadsvideos.com, but I think it's like an intro thing.
Okay, got it. So I'll link that URL down below in the YouTube video so that people can go and check him out.
Yeah.
So how did you practice the questions on the Chem DAT?
So Chem, well, a lot of the Chem was in the DAT Destroyer because that comes with Biochem and Ochem as well, and math. But yeah, that's how I did a lot. So what I did for Chem was I started off with Chad's videos. I watched the video some more than once. I did all his questions, his quizzes that he provides with those. And then I immediately went into the Destroyer. This was a little bit, so I feel like that's kind of a big jump, especially for me. I feel like the material in the Destroyer compared to Chad's videos is like a lot more advanced. So about a third of the way through the Destroyer, I kind of realized that I was heavily lacking in chemistry, especially the concepts. So what I did was I bought the Exam Crackers chemistry book,
Mhm.
and I went all through that. And I would highly recommend that if you need extra help. And I have it right here.
It's the MCAT book, right?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, Exam Crackers are MCAT,
Mhm.
but they the material is like the same as the DAT. So
Right.
yeah, it was really helpful. I feel like it really kind of dumbs down certain concepts. Like it breaks it down well. It makes it easy to remember and learn. So I went through all of that and did that in about 4 days, and then came back to the Destroyer. Felt a lot more prepared. Finished the Destroyer. I actually went through the Destroyer a total of 2 times.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I did for chemistry.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what was the distinguishable factor for Exam Crackers chemistry book? Because I haven't heard a lot of people use it for the DAT. So what did you feel that you got? What benefit did you get out of it?
So Exam Crackers, it just really broke the concepts down into like a really simple and easy to understand language.
Mhm.
It's been so long since I've studied those sciences that I really needed just a basic breakdown.
Right.
Also, throughout the book, they have like some mnemonic devices, just little things on the side that'll help you remember
Yeah.
certain things, and that helped a lot.
I think
Uh,
the book is written in a funny way as well. So
yeah,
that really helps. I remember that book from my friends when they are taking the MCATs.
yeah.
Exam Crackers, I mean, it's an amazing resource for the MCAT. So I guess you can also use it for the DAT. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So in terms of the understanding the material, how is Chad's video different from Exam Crackers? Because he also makes it very easy, right? And I'm sure that's what your experience as well with him.
Yeah. Chaz's video was good. He also provides a PDF file,
Okay.
and while you're doing Chaz's videos, I would actually highly recommend before you start printing that PDF off because it gives you plenty of space to take notes and go ahead and take notes. Where he's talking about whatever topic he's on. That way, it's just easier for organization. But
Right.
so Chaz's videos, like I said, it was very helpful. I think it's a little lacking in concepts
Hmm.
because it's more of a review, so he doesn't dive super deep in a lot of stuff, and yeah. But he has a lot of good practice problems as well.
So what I understood is that because you're so many years out of school,
Mhm.
getting through the Exam Crackers book was much more helpful to solidify the concepts in your head. And I think Chad does a good job. Chad is good enough to get a 20, but to get a 24, 25, 26, you need to do you need to do some more prep. You need to do some extra step.
Mhm.
And did you do the same thing for organic chemistry as well?
Yeah, I pretty much did. Yeah, I went through
Okay.
Chad's videos, Ochem. Oh, for Ochem, so I did the Chad's videos, that whole thing, and then I also went ahead and bought the DAT Destroyer Ochem Odyssey. Yeah, Ochem Odyssey book from the.
Oh, okay. That looks fancy.
Yeah, it's very in detailed. I was just looking in here. They have some things in here that don't really pertain to the DAT.
Hmm.
Just a couple of chapters like amino acids and I don't know that kind of thing. But that was really helpful, providing a lot of reactions and problems, and it helped to I don't know just made me understand OChem better. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So you bought that on top of the DAT Destroyer Ochem series. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, actually, I went ahead and I bought 3 books from the DAT Destroyer people, which is Dr. Jim Romano. But so I bought the Destroyer, the Ochem Odyssey, as well as the Math Destroyer.
Hmm.
And I kind of made a mistake by buying them all separately because they have a package deal. You can save like $100, $150, something like that. But I don't know. I would recommend buying it in a package if you know you're going to get all 3.
Okay. How much money could you have saved if you bought the package?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure it was like 100, $150, something like
Okay,
that.
that's a lot of money though.
Yeah.
If you're applying, because a lot of the undergraduates they don't have as much money to pay for it. So guys, get the bundle. It's gonna
Mhm.
save you a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move to English reading comprehension.
Mhm.
How did you study for that? Because a lot of my students come back to me and tell me that, what do you recommend for reading comprehension? And honestly, there isn't many things you can do except reading a lot.
Yeah.
So what did you
Um,
do?
so reading comprehension. I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking down my notes at the same time.
Mhm.
Reading comprehension was that was my weak point. That
Okay.
was the part that I had to work on the most.
Okay.
Uh, I took the DAT once before back in 2010, and I got like a 17 on there. It's just reading comprehension has always been a weak point in several different types of tests. So I knew I would have to work pretty hard on this. So I looked at a lot of student doctor network breakdowns, and a lot of people were saying to look at Scientific American.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a website you can go on, and they have several different scientific articles. And they were suggesting to increase your speed, you read like three articles, like in the morning before you're studying or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And in order to kind of feel like I was really getting something from that, because you can just read it and just kind of like, you might start daydreaming, just kind of, half effort or whatever.
Right.
So what I did was I would first, before I read it, I would first highlight it and copy and paste to a Word document and get a word count. Then I would start a timer and see how long it took me to read a certain amount of words. Because the thing is, on the DAT, they're going to give you a certain amount of words in 3 passages.
Right.
So I would try to base that instead of saying like, oh, this passage was 4 paragraphs long. Like, I mean, you could have a short paragraph, you could have a long paragraph. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge off that. So I think judging by your word count is the better way to increase your rate. And basically, me increasing my rate was, for the most part, just cutting down the amount of time I was daydreaming while, it's like just keeping that focus. And
it's hard to keep that focus. I mean, I understand how hard it could be to read those boring passages, and but you gotta get used to it. Dental school is not going to be easy. It's a lot of reading, so make sure that you get used to reading. But I did use Scientific American both when I was taking the DAT and also when I was taking the GMAT. It's highly recommended for both exams, and I think it's highly recommended for any standardized exam because of the reading comprehension section where you have to read a lot. And what Scientific American does very well is that they break down the science materials into very readable passages. Like they make it easy for regular people who are not coming from a science background to understand that very well. So, as Justin mentioned, make sure that you time yourself while reading this topics or paragraphs, and make sure that you take notes so that you don't forget what you're reading. So I know that DAT reading comprehension passages could be long. It could be very long. Did you use search and destroy method to find answers, or did you use something different?
So that would actually lead into my next thing. So I did use the Scientific American strategy, but to be honest, what I felt helped the most was I went to DAT Vault and I bought the reading comprehension package from there. I think it was like $50. And what I would do is I would do a passage with questions per day, and I would do that, just like one passage with the questions per day instead of reading Scientific American sometimes. And I felt like that really helped me out the most because it allowed me to kind of play with different strategies and see what works the best.
Interesting.
So there were some cases where I could use search and destroy, and there were some cases where, like for example, a tone question or
inference question.
Yeah.
Search and destroy for inference question. I think those really gave me a lot of hard time because you have to like think about them, kind of read like top and bottom of the passage and kind of find out where exactly they're asking us to go back to and refer to. So that's hard.
Yeah. And so I looked at several different people's strategies and I would try them out and see what worked best.
Yeah.
Some people are saying they would take like a short note for each paragraph. But for me, like I was always running short on time. So it was like I didn't really have time to sit there and write something for each, that really didn't work for me. I felt it was easy enough to kind of remember in a general idea of where something was in the paragraph and just easily scroll through it to find it. I didn't have to write something down.
Got it.
So for the reading comprehension, I also used boot camp.
Okay.
That was one of my sources.
DAT boot camp, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I felt the DAT boot camp was probably a little closer in reality to what the actual test is like than DAT Q-ball. Some people say some people say boot camp is harder than the actual test. I would say it's slightly harder. It is pretty comparable to the real thing.
That's what I heard as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What I kind of think now, the thing is, I only did 4 passages from boot camp, so I have kind of a small sample size. But what I found was boot camp gave 3 passages per practice test, right? And one of them was pretty hard, one was kind of medium, and one was kind of easier.
Yeah.
Like they do a good job of mixing up the difficulties, and that's exactly how my actual test went. So you have 3 paragraphs or 3 passages.
Mm-hmm.
My first passage was super hard. Like, oh my God, it was so hard. I went in with a game plan of, only spending 20 minutes per passage because they give you 60 minutes, 3 passages, 20 per passage. So I was going to try to not spend, but I ended up spending 30 minutes on the first passage because it was so hard. And then my very next passage was super easy. And I was like, golly, I wish I had to maybe spend more time on this one because I'm just like rushing through it. I was having to rush questions that if I spent just a little bit more time on, I could know for sure I was getting it right. And then the last passage was kind of medium difficulty, but
okay,
yeah, that's how that went.
Great. So, and reading is always a challenge for people that are not English speaker, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
But like the main idea is to do a lot of practice and do it systematically. And when you're practicing, make sure you're focusing. Like as Justin mentioned, focus is the main idea. Like if you're not focusing on the passage, you can just read through things, and with the you're not going to understand what you're reading. So that's the key to do well in reading comprehension. So we covered reading comprehension. The next subtopic that I have in mind is PAT.
Yeah.
So what's your story about PAT? How did you study for it? What are some of the resources that you have used?
Yeah. So for PAT, let's see. I did end up buying. What is it? Can't think of it.
Correct, the PAT.
Yeah, that one. I did end up buying that one because I remember I used it back in 2010.
Yeah.
Kind of ran out of time. Only ended up using the first practice test.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did for the PAT for the 99% of the time was I used the DAT bootcamp.
Okay.
I would use the generators, and I felt those were pretty helpful.
Sorry, can you repeat what you said? You used the DAT Destroyer, and then DAT Bootcamp, and what else?
Oh, so I used Crack DAT. I only did the first test from it, and then for the other 99% of my PAT time, I'd use DAT Bootcamp.
Okay.
And I would use the generators. Those are pretty awesome.
The generators, is that where is that from?
Oh, so they give PAT generators in the DAT bootcamp. So all it is practice for each subsection of the PAT. Okay. Like it's just unlimited practice problems. And I would time myself for each one. And I kind of realized, which areas I needed more help in and that kind of thing. And what I would do is I would spend 15 minutes per subsection, and I would do 2 subsections every morning before I started studying everything else. Okay. So I was 30 minutes a day in the morning on PAT. And, if there was a subsection I needed more help on, I would spend more days doing that. one thing to note about the PAT, these generators, I feel like the generators are maybe a little bit kind of basic compared to the actual exam. The thing is, I never actually did any full-length practice tests for the whole thing, but as well for the PAT. And I have heard from friends that the actual practice tests on the boot camp are a lot more similar to the actual tests. So the generators are a little bit basic compared to the practice test and the exam, the actual exam. So when I got to my actual exam, like the real questions were like a lot more challenging than just these generators.
Okay.
Well, I was actually a bit underprepared for the PAT section.
So focus on the DAT bootcamp's practice exam more than the generators. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, the generators can help, but don't use that as your sole source of studying for the PAT.
Okay, so start with the generators in the beginning,
Yeah,
but then
sure.
do a lot of practice exams from the bootcamp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that brings to our last section of the DAT, math. What did you do to prepare for the math section?
Yeah, so what I did was, as mentioned before, I bought the Math Destroyer, which looks like this.
Okay, it hasn't changed in a while.
Yeah. So I think they have like 18. Yeah, I think they have like 18 or something like that practice tests,
Okay.
full-length practice tests, like 40 questions a test.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went ahead and did 10 of those practice exams. To be honest, I really didn't time like most of them because it took me a long time to do them.
Okay.
They're pretty challenging. And also it's been so long since I've done a lot of that math stuff. It's been forever since I've looked at a trig or a log or, trig log functions or some geometry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about all that. I'd forgotten it. So I had to like pretty much relearn a lot of stuff. And man, I can remember some nights I would spend 3 hours just trying to figure out how they did one problem. I don't know. But I got it. That's the point. So
that's the point. You have to work through the problems and get it.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, I feel like when you struggle with a problem and you eventually get it, like that really sticks in your head. So that way, if you were to come across it again, like you can, instantly, like, oh, I know how to do that.
Yeah.
So I did the Math Destroyer, 10 problems there. The DAT Destroyer itself comes with, a math section. I did those, but I felt like those were a little bit easier in comparison to the actual Math Destroyer.
Okay.
Did all those. And I did the DAT Bootcamp's math portion.
Okay.
How
was that?
I felt that was really representative of the actual exam.
Okay.
So yeah, if you were to try to get 21 and above, like if you want to get your max possible score in the math section, I would advise you to do all of the practice tests from the Math Destroyer twice.
Okay.
Know the explanations really well, and as well go ahead and do all of the practice exams from the boot camp.
All right, so everyone listening in to Justin, make sure that you do the DAT Destroyer math section twice, each of them twice, so that you get the best out of it, right? I know that you had some interesting ideas about test taking and test prepping. Do you want to go over that?
Yeah, sure. So just some extra miscellaneous things that I think would be helpful.
Yeah.
Let's see. So what I did for my study day, because 12 plus hours a day, that's a long time. Like you're gonna get bored. You're gonna want to do something else. And some things will work differently for other people. Like some people, they want to take an hour to go to the gym. Maybe a lot of people. And that whatever works for you is best. What worked for me was I would do this thing where I study, only focus on studies for 50 minutes. And then 10 minutes, I would just, chill out, like go look at Instagram or YouTube or walk around outside or whatever. But I would come back after that 10 minutes and study for another 50 minutes, and just
Okay.
that's how I got through my day to such a long day. And I don't know, I feel like that's the best way for me to be the most productive. Like during those 50 minutes, I didn't look at Facebook, I didn't look at anything. It was just straight studying.
So how did you kind of like how did you keep yourself accountable to not go more than 10 minutes when you had to break?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be honest, man. Sometimes I did go over 10. I would go like 12, but that was the goal, and having that as a goal helped me to come back. But I did my best to stay on 10 minutes. And what I would do was I made a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and wrote down the exact times of when I was gonna break, when was my next, I don't know, study time, and
Yeah.
I kept time on a spreadsheet.
So basically making sure that you're not going over the 10-minute mark, and even if you go, like, make sure that you know about it so that you're aware of how many minutes you're spending taking a break. Because some people, I mean, including myself, I'm guilty of it. Whenever I'm taking a break, sometimes 10 minutes could become 50 minutes, an
Oh yeah,
hour, 2
yeah.
hours. So did you take any longer break than 10 minutes, or did you just do 50-10, 50-10, and 50-10? Did you, or
Yeah, when I was eating, that was usually like 20 to 30 minutes.
okay. But you
But
did not take any other break. It just like went on from when did you wake up?
uh, uh, different times. I think like 8 o'clock, something like that.
Okay, so 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. you just study, and then you just go to sleep. After you finished studying, and then
Hmm.
okay. So that's I think normal for people taking the DAT because it's still a lot of material that you have to cover over the
Yeah, a lot.
3-month period that you have to study.
Hmm.
So I think that's ideal. What advice do you have for people that are out of school and kind of trying to learn or relearn the material that they haven't seen in a few years?
Yeah, yeah. I would start basic, and then so the general idea is you start basic and then move your way up to more advanced materials.
Yeah.
And another thing, so that's the general idea. And another thing is like don't ever get comfortable with a subject. Don't ever get so always try to be learning something new. No amount of studying is like too much.
Hmm.
I can remember the day before the test, I was still looking up certain, reactions for Ochem. Like I was still learning the day before the test. Like, and I think that's how you do the best you can.
So continue learning every day and make sure
Yeah.
that you don't get comfortable with one of the topics or one of the subjects in the DAT. All right.
Hmm.
Got it. Got it. All right. So the next topic that I do want to talk about is that, while taking the DAT, what was your support system like? Some people feel that they have to like kind of close themselves in a room and just study, and you kind of have to like sacrifice some of the social activities during the DAT. So what was the process like for you? Like, did you have to sacrifice social life for 3 months, or did you
Oh
just
yeah. Oh
okay?
yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. My friends, they knew that what I was doing, and I really didn't talk to hardly anyone, man. I just locked myself in my apartment. Um, I was supposed to go to a wedding, and I didn't even let. It was my cousin's wedding. I didn't even talk to my aunt to let her know. Like I was just strictly focused on this. Like I had very little communication with the outside world. I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I realize I'm a little bit different. Probably most people want to, talk with their friends or something. But
Yeah. No, but I would do the same thing. I would just close myself down in one room and just study for 3 months straight.
yeah,
And some people do it differently. Some people want to spend their time with their spouses or with their boyfriend or girlfriend, whoever they might want to spend time with. It depends on your individual preference, but you have to spend that time and energy, focusing on the DAT and not something else. And it's hard for a lot of people.
right. And another thing is like everyone is different. Like we're all starting from different starting points.
Right.
Some people like maybe they just took this certain class, so they really don't need to spend as much time as someone like me who hasn't studied that in like 7 years or something. So I had a lot of ground to cover, and
Right.
so I really kind of had to cut out most of the stuff. If you're a little bit more familiar with the subject, maybe you can go out an hour or two a day, or you don't have to be as strict. But
Exactly. All right. So aside from that, what other advice do you have for people that are taking the DAT?
Sure. So I have a few other kind of miscellaneous things. Let's see. One of the things is test anxiety.
Okay.
Uh, so this was, like I said, this was my second time taking it. Um, I kind of remember the very first time I took it the night before, um, specifically the night before. I didn't sleep well because I was so nervous. Even upcoming to the exam, like I don't know, a month out, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever. I find myself getting kind of nervous, getting real anxious. And I really think the best way to get rid of that is to study your absolute hardest. If you have it in your mind that you know you did everything you could do and you left nothing on the table, like I mean, you can't really be mad if you don't get the result you wanted because you know you gave everything you had.
Right.
So I made it my point to really try to do as best I could every single day. You know, don't go over the 10-minute mark of break. You know, like just give it all I had, and that really kind of helped to relieve some stress or anxiety or that type of thing.
Okay. That's a really good advice because I feel that sometimes I'm not doing my best, and when
Hmm.
I don't do well on the exam, I have only myself to blame. And if you do absolutely the best you can do yourself, I don't think you leave any room for that guilt or blame that, well, I haven't done enough to practice or to prepare for the DAT. But that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have a couple more.
Yeah.
Um, scheduling, scheduling the test.
Okay.
So scheduling the test. So this is a pretty big test. This is a really big test. There's a lot of material to learn,
Hmm.
and and learning all that material is going to take a lot of time. So it's pretty hard to schedule an exam. It's pretty hard to kind of know exactly when you're going to be at your peak, when you're going to feel like you're comfortable with every section, especially a month out or something like that.
Right.
What I would do probably about a month out, I would go ahead and schedule your exam, or
Okay.
maybe even a little bit earlier. Like I don't know, just go ahead and get a date down,
Hmm.
kind of in advance. And what that will do is that will give you a realistic date of when you're going to take it, and that will make your study time more efficient.
Right.
Uh, that will mean like if you have a date set, like you're gonna like not try to I don't know play around as much. You're gonna be a lot more focused because you know like okay, I have to get it done by this date. Now, that being said, since it is so far out and the test is quite a big scope of material,
Yeah.
there's a good chance you won't be ready by that time. You know, so don't be afraid to push it back. You know, push it back. Don't be afraid to push it back. Maybe 2 weeks. I myself, I did push it back 2 weeks, and I feel like that was probably the smartest thing I ever did. But before I pushed it back, I knew I had a date. I was super stressed because I didn't feel ready. You know, I'm constantly just trying to cram in as much info as possible. And it was just, it was so stressful and I hated it. So I pushed it back 2 weeks, and that gave me the time I needed to go ahead and dive deeper into each subject and really learn it well.
Okay.
Um, and I feel like that was really helpful. But the thing is about pushing it back is don't be afraid to do it. But at the same time, it's easy to get caught in a cycle of constantly pushing it back. Some people push it back like 5 or 6 times. That's just you don't need to do don't do that. Like the thing is, this test is a big test, a lot of material, and you're never gonna feel 100% ready. You can be prepared, but you're never gonna feel ready. So, you at some point you gotta just have confidence in yourself, know that you put in the work beforehand, and that you're prepared
Right.
to take it. And another thing is, about that can be tricky about scheduling is if you schedule it too far in advance. If you schedule it too far out, you might forget some stuff. Like you may not be at your peak time, so you want to schedule it whenever your peak time is.
How
So
do
you
you
don't
know?
want.
How do you know what is your peak time?
Yeah, so you just kind of start off like maybe a month or a month and a half in advance. And you just set a date, Then when that date approaches, maybe a week or two out, you have to like have an honest conversation with yourself and just ask like, am I ready? And if you really don't feel like you're ready, that's when I would say go ahead and push it back a couple weeks and to make sure you're in your peak time.
Cool. What's
Yeah.
next?
So that's scheduling. Next is probably the last thing I have is bad days.
Okay,
So
tell me about it.
yeah, man. So there are all right. So you have to accept the fact that you're gonna have some bad days. There are gonna be days when a practice test doesn't go well, like you just score badly. There's gonna be days when you can't, for whatever reason, can't remember a certain reaction from Ochem, or just there are gonna be days when nothing seems to make sense.
Okay.
What you have to do is you have to just chalk it up as a bad day and come back to it the next day and keep coming back to it. Keep trying to figure it out, keep trying to learn. Don't let that one or two, whatever, don't let those short-term failures discourage you from your long-term success.
Yeah.
Once you change your mentality as, these struggles, these bad days are just a part of the process to me getting to where I'm trying to go, then that's when you start to be productive. You can score well and that type of thing. Just kind of realize that there are going to be days when nothing makes sense, but just keep pushing through it and keep coming back to those materials, and eventually you're going to get it. It's going to make sense, and you're not going to have any more problems with it. But yeah, don't get too discouraged when you have a bad day, and just keep coming back to it. I think is the key to doing well.
Got it. And I want to ask you one last question, is that how did you sustain your motivation for such a long time, for 3 months straight? And you're waking up, you're studying 12 to 15 hours a day. How did you sustain that motivation?
Yeah, so that's a good thing. Motivation is key. Like like I was saying, I kept an Excel spreadsheet about my time and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what I learned is not all study hours are created equally. You
Okay.
can have an hour where you just are not motivated and you just kind of slack off. You cover as much material, or you could have 30 minutes and you're super motivated and you cover a lot. So you're right. Motivation is key. How I kept that is I wrote down some motivational phrases and that I really enjoyed and posted them on my wall.
Mm-hmm.
I actually still have them. If you want me to zoom in on.
Show me some.
Okay.
Yeah, show us some of the motivational things that you wrote down.
Sure thing, man. So let's see here. I don't know if you can read that.
I can read it. The only way to get to where you are, the only way to get to where you want to go is through hard work. Get there.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that was one thing that's one phrase that kind of meant a lot to me, and it's like going through this test is hard, and the only way to get the score you want to get is you have to put in a lot of hard work, and that's just kind of what I would always keep reminding myself.
That's for sure. I mean, any good things take hard work. So.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely the key to success in the DAT, or even in any board exams that you're going to be taking, or any exams that you're going to be taking in dental school. So definitely hard work is the key.
Yeah. Also, so like I would watch some motivational videos, YouTube videos.
Which one did you like most?
Oh, Eric Thomas is my favorite.
I like that guy. He's the man. So I used to watch his video like pretty much every other day to keep myself going, as DAT could be exhausting.
Yes.
And he just the stories that he tell, and that 9-minute video or 14-minute video is just the key to getting, staying on top of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. So like I would take 10-minute breaks sometimes during my breaks, or even while I'm eating, I would watch one of his videos. Also, I guess I'll go ahead and show you this too. So I watched his videos a lot, and I learned a lot from his videos. They were great motivation. And so I took another phrase from his videos, which was I can, I will, I must.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see You can see I have that on my wall, and that's like directly in front of my study desk.
Mm-hmm.
So during times like whenever, I don't know, I would come across, especially Ochem, because I didn't remember anything. Like sometimes it would feel like this DAT was too big of a mountain to overcome.
Right.
And I would just feel, just exhausted, not motivated. And I would just look at, I can, I will, I must. And that was I just say that to myself, and that kind of got me through some really sticky points.
Got it.
Yeah.
Definitely. This, his video was the thing that kept me going for the DAT.
Yeah.
Right, do you have any last minute advice?
Any last minute advice?
Any idiosyncratic advice that people should follow for the testing day?
Yeah. So, don't get too nervous. But at the same time, just prepare as much as you can. Dive deep into each subject. And I didn't mention this yet, but Wikipedia is gonna be like your best friend. Like you're gonna always be looking up stuff. Oh, another thing for videos. Videos can be really helpful to learn. And another thing is you can put these videos on like 1.5 speed, and you can cover a lot of information easily in a short amount of time.
Right.
That was helpful. On the day of the test, I've heard it's a good idea to go ahead and go up to the testing center the day before your test to make sure you know how to go and that kind of thing. I didn't really do that. I just got there like an hour and a half early.
I would just spend that time studying, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I did. I thought my original plan was to go up there the day before, but then at the same time I started to realize I was a little bit behind my study plan, and I felt my time would be better used by studying. So that's what I did, and I just got there an hour or so earlier than my actual test, and just brought some study materials to go over. I went ahead and brought a couple of snacks, just whatever for during break time. I think you get like 30 minutes for a break. So,
what did you eat during the break?
What did I eat? Well, I like these Lenny and Larry protein cookies.
Okay.
So I had those. I mean, I don't know, whatever you feel is best, go for that.
Yeah. Okay. Because I remember like someone on SDN recommended prunes and I don't know, like something sweet, so that you have good amount of sugar in your brain, because you're exhausted after taking this science portion of the exam.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a pretty big coffee drinker, as you can see. But
yeah.
So caffeine is kind of a thing for me. It's probably not for everyone, but I went ahead and brought these little caffeine pills. It's a little 200 milligram caffeine.
What is it called? What brand is it?
I can actually show it to you if you want.
Show me.
All right, give me like a minute. Hold up.
Yeah.
So what I have is these. They're called Jet Alert.
Okay, Jet Alert. Okay.
Yeah.
So how much is that?
Oh, they're real cheap. It's like $3 for 90 caplets.
$3 or $30?
$3.
$3? No way.
They're maybe $4. They're really cheap.
Because on SDN and other forums you hear about doxydarol, which is like $30 for 35 capsules.
Oh, wow.
Or Optimind. Optimind is expensive. Optimind is like $45. It's all like new supplement caffeine pills / energy provider.
I guess everyone kind of has their own opinions about those kind of, and then you could also get into nootropics. I don't know if you ever thought about those. Personally, I don't really think they do much, but for me, like I was saying, these little caffeine pills do just what I need. So, don't go crazy. Take like 3 or 4. Just take like 1, and you'll be
good. Okay, good. Because I can't take more than 1 at a time.
Yeah, no.
I mean, one day. All right. So I think we covered a lot of materials here. So let me recap what we covered, and you can kind of tell me like what I missed. So we covered about the resources that you used to do really well in the DAT. We talked about your study habits. We also talked about how you studied, like the schedules that you had. And we talked about some ideas to implement on the test day so that you're doing optimally in the main day. And we also talked about some of the outside advice. For example, maybe caffeinate yourself or take some snacks during the exam, stuff like that. Have I missed anything, Justin, or do you have any last minute advice that the pre-dance should follow to do really well on the DAT like you did?
I think we pretty much. I'm looking at my books. So the only thing I would say is the Exam Cracker. They're great books. We mentioned the chemistry one, but I did use the Ochem one periodically. I would just kind of look at that on specific topics, and I didn't really have time to go through it. But if you have time, the biology book from the Exam Cracker is also good.
Okay.
But yeah, those are things that we didn't mention, but I think they're helpful too.
Okay, good. So thank you so much, Justin. This has been an amazing interview. I think people are going to be benefited by this interview. Although it's long, it's going to be an hour, close to an hour, but I'm sure that people are going to get a lot of value out of this interview. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, no problem, man.